let's take a look at the amplitude move of what we could expect basically from this type of move possibly come next week as early as Tuesday in terms of which way we might start seeing this be put in motion. So to the downside, we broke down right here. So this would be our target to the downside. Let's see if it matches up with anything else down below over here. We're looking at 16 bucks, around that 16 bucks mark. Actually, we talked about in our last update that we thought that if we go to the downside, we would see price hold around this area over here, this basically area of consolidation. This is our second area. We talked about these two areas of consolidation in the past. Yo, what up, you guys? It's Market Scraper. I hope you guys held on to your shares and we had a pretty wild ride. So we can see that basically the lows actually came in really early on in pre-market. We had some massive drops with a lot of stocks across the board, especially in Palantir stocks, going to $16.35 or so. And we can see that, interestingly, the amplitude move from our last update to the downside actually corresponds exactly at that level. So we're going to look into that. And also, interestingly, we can see 200 or over 200 million shares traded hands today. And if you get any value from this content, don't forget to put a smash down on the like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. I'd really appreciate it. And if you're into cryptocurrencies, definitely check out my BlockFi link in the description down below. I'm a partner with BlockFi. You can get up to $250 in Bitcoin. And this is the payout structure here. And I also like the 8.6% APY I can get on my stable coins with them. And so if we jump into Palantir stock right over here, again, like I said, this amplitude move that I showed in the last update, if we look at where we broke down over here, basically we can see the lows come in right around $16 actually and almost 30 cents. And we can see from basically an intraday chart over here, we can see that the lows intraday came exactly right around $16.35 or so. So that is pretty interesting in terms of where our amplitude went. And we talked about that area right around $16.30 and corresponding with this area basically of consolidation over here that we thought that was going to be pretty critical for this stock. So that was pretty interesting. Interesting that we got that move to the downside. Now, are we going to see a recovery to the upside now that that move essentially, in terms of the technical move, is basically complete? Now with Tesla stock, we clearly thought that we were going to hold this level right here. We did not hold this level. We broke through, and you can see that when we broke through this significant line right here, we broke through pretty hard and we kept going down. So is this move over is a question now. Let's take a look at basically this amplitude move that I also been talking about with Tesla stock. And we can see basically if we move this over here to when we broke down right over here, where does this correspond to essentially? So this corresponds to basically, we can see around 570 or so. So the question is this now, is this move to the downside done or are we going to go lower? So the question is also, maybe it has to do with Palantir. What does that mean by with Palantir? I'm talking about the after hours price movement. So the after hours price movement actually went to as low as the 570s. So we went to see basically 578 was the close over here. So this is a question that we have to be just keeping in mind that the lows of the day actually were much lower in terms of if we count the pre-market sell-off, that crazy sell-off, which is pretty unique and doesn't happen all the time. So we have to keep that in mind that this price action to the downside, basically, maybe it was the lows of the day. Maybe it filled some price target that Tesla was trying to go to. Now, besides just this amplitude move to the downside, there are some other important levels. We did close and the low of the day was above the low over here. This is price level number one to keep in mind. And the next area to keep in mind is basically the lows from over here. This is another area that we want to keep in mind to see if price can hold the line over here and hold the line down over here as well. It doesn't mean we can't go lower, but basically what we're saying is that this technical move from breaking down from this pattern might have been fulfilled already. That doesn't mean we can't go down further because we don't know actually what the trend is. We do know that the move to the downside probably was corresponded with some additional news, additional FUD, additional bad bad coverage of Tesla stock with deliveries in China. So we're going to see how that plays out. Basically, there's been a ton of bad news, and the news cycle for Tesla has been horrendous, and the FUD around Tesla has been horrendous. Is this enough to spark Tesla into a long-term downtrend? This is possible. This we have to be paying attention to. But at the same time, we also have to be aware that the technical move that we were watching was essentially fulfilled. However, I generally don't like to play into what happens in pre-market and aftermarket, but because this was a pretty interesting day, especially in tech, and it happened across the board, this is something that I'm going to keep in mind. Now, what's going on in the market today? So we can see that we broke our important line here that we've been watching. This is the line in the sand that basically saying that if we cross this line, we will be in for some more additional pain. Now, the question is now, are we going to go break down and continue to break down? And there's an interesting gap right over here. So this is going to be the battle of the gaps. Which gap is going to be filled first? The one down here or the one up here? The only other indication that we might have gotten today is across the board, this was a low that we achieved today. This was some price action that we were trying to go to, and we fulfilled going to whatever price this was trying to go to. It's kind of like on these days, we were trying to go somewhere and we exhausted the selling basically. This was another one of those days basically. And we can see a bullish price action to the upside. So on the face value of this, we have A, this is bearish that we broke this line. But B, we have two gaps that we are looking at, and which gap will be filled first. My bias right now is that we will fill this gap to the upside. And at the same time, will we reclaim this level? Will we be able to get back above this trend? I'm not exactly sure if we can get back above this trend. I think we'll go back up here, hit this trend, and probably get rejected. This is my bias. We will see what happens with tomorrow's CPI data. That could be a spring to the upside or to the downside. So we have to be aware of what happens with that data. I hope you guys got some value from this content. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel for more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. And keep in mind that none of this is financial advice. This is just some random guy on YouTube drawing some stick figure lines on a chart talking to you guys.